My honor to pass it over to our Mayor O'Connor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think she's got some good news to share with us tonight. My honor to pass it over to our Mayor O'Connor.
So, Yvonne, I'm not sure what's happening. We just heard some echoing here, but I am here at Center Point in Kamloops tonight, and unfortunately we're having trouble getting the video working. So I will do my opening remarks. Somebody has just arrived to hopefully help us, but I will carry on and go on with my opening remarks incognito here. So first of all, I just want to welcome everyone to this evening's community meeting. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm here with Recovery Manager Mike in Kamloops on the traditional unceded ancestral territory of the Kamloops Teshwetmik Nation. This community meeting is for the people of the village of Lytton and the surrounding communities. It's critical that the village recognizes the importance of our neighbors who live in the regional district and those that live in the various Intlakatlan First Nation communities. The rebuilding of the homes and services and businesses in the village impacts everyone. In this meeting tonight, we're going to be hearing information and updates that will help us change the narrative from recovery to rebuild. This past month, as we drove through the village, limited activity was observed. People made many assumptions, which spurred many rumors. But as your mayor, I can assure you that we are not at a standstill, but rather we're actually at a critical turning point. At last night's council meeting, we lifted the state of local emergency. This morning, I was inundated with media interviews regarding this. But this removal actually comes into effect on Monday, May 19th officially. Some are asking what it will mean. So what it means is that the fences are going to come down, backfilling will begin, property owners can take back their properties. It means that we've reached a tipping point where terms like debris removal, soil remediation, all of those things will soon be terms of the past. It's important to recognize, of course, that we continue the work with our provincial partners and all of the other partners that are here walking alongside us as we go through this. As you may or may not have heard, this past weekend, there was a Sunday service held at the St. Barnabas Church in the village of Lytton. And you may or may not have noticed, but all the signs such as danger, no stopping, keep your windows rolled up, they've all been removed from downtown. These are indications that Lytton is open for business and that things are moving forward. Tonight, we're going to hear updates from Interior Health, Pacifican, and I believe the Heritage Branch. Before we hear from our recovery, so we're going to hear from them before we hear from our recovery managers who are going to update us on what is happening. Afterward, there's going to be ample time for questions from the community. As in every meeting, I encourage you to raise your hand or type your questions in the Zoom chat. So we look forward to a great meeting tonight. And I'm now going to turn it back over to Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. So just to start, I just thought we'd just quickly share the agenda here with you. So we've had our welcoming remarks. In a minute, I'm just going to go over a little bit of Zoom instructions for you all. And then we have a number of updates, as Mayor O'Connor just mentioned. So there's a few today, and then we'll finish off with questions and comments and some final closing remarks. So I just ask that if you're not speaking, you may want to mute yourself because we are getting a bit of background noises in here. So I'd just like to start off to say that the purpose of today's session is to provide an opportunity for the residents and for all of you to ask questions and provide you with the latest updates on recovery and rebuild I do want to give you a really quick glance at the Zoom instructions in case there's anyone new on the call tonight. I also see that there's some resource people on the call today. So they can be there to help answer questions. Just put those in the chat too. We may not be able to get to all of the questions, but we will follow up with a Q&A on the Village website. We do have a couple rules for participation, and we just ask everyone to please focus the questions on today's topics and questions that apply to the whole entire community, as opposed to maybe individual questions about your own property. If you have questions like that, we would like to answer those for you. Just email them to communication@lytton.ca and we'll send it over to the right folks. I want to acknowledge that today we will do the best to answer as many questions and answers as we can, but we may not be able to get through all of it. So like I mentioned, there will be a Q&A posted afterwards. And if you didn't have a chance to even put your question into the chat tonight, please just email communication@lytton.ca and we'll get those posted. The next rule I just want to go through really, really briefly here is that we just ask that you use appropriate language. You refrain from using profanities or abusive language. And as always, negative comments towards any individuals aren't going to be tolerated tonight, and we'll have to remove you from the session. So we ask that you speak in a respectful in your tone and that use the chat box to put in your comments on there. Keep your questions directly if you can and to the point. You can ask a question by raising your hand, but please feel free to do that at the end of the meeting. And I just have a quick note, if there are media joining us tonight, thank you for being here. You're very welcome. The purpose, though, is for the community members and for their questions. So if you do have media questions, please also email those to communication@lytton.ca and we'll get back to you. So a little bit of Zoom practices. You'll see that in the bottom of your screen, there is a chat button. And so it pops up on the right hand of your screen, and then you can use that to type in your questions. If you don't want to ask your question aloud, you're certainly welcome to ask your question aloud, and that you can just do that by raising your hand. And that is in the reactions little button over there. And you just put the little yellow hand up there. If you have joined us from a telephone, you can do it from *6, and that allows you to unmute yourself, and *9 actually raises your hand. So I think that's the end of my little spiel here. Always, if you have a technical question with the meeting, just you can email communications or put it in the chat. I will be trying to check that communication email, see if I can help you out there tonight. We've just got a few more people coming into the meeting, letting them in here. Okay, so there we go, chat questions. And I'm just going to move over to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to move it over to Paula from the archaeological branch, and she's our first speaker. And wow, that's very nice that we can see Centerpoint now. That's great.
Thank you very much. I'm calling today as well with Ted White, my executive director. We're calling this evening from Victoria, the Lekwungen speaking people. I do have 2 visuals tonight, so I will share that. So we understand how difficult the situation has been, and we continue to actively support the Lytton Council and the entire community so that they can rebuild as quickly as possible. And congratulations on all of your recent milestones. This is fantastic work. The Village of Lytton is leading the archaeology process, with the Ministry of Forests Archaeology Branch adjudicating the permits required to complete this work. Provincial supports include the $23.4 million to cover costs for debris removal, remediation of contaminated sediments, associated field archaeological work, and more. In addition, the $21 million has been provided to help reestablish essential infrastructure and services like water treatment and sewer infrastructure, and a further $9 million to support the village with ongoing operation staffing. The village Oh, I see somebody's writing on this. The village has been providing updates to residents through public town halls supported with government. In previous town halls, we attended the one in January and in March. I described what an archaeological site is, why this work is taking place, and why there are differences between the reserve and the village. But tonight, I will just provide a brief update on how we're moving forward with providing advice directly to the village instead of providing letters to residents. So going forward, the archaeology branch will provide management direction for direct work and when required, further assessment. The province's letters. So this kind of shows that the Village of Lytton's archaeologist is conducting the archaeological work and is writing the report. That report is submitted to the archaeology branch where we adjudicate the deliverables authorized underneath the Heritage Conservation Act permits, and we provide management direction to the Village of Lytton's recovery manager. And then the Village of Lytton will be working with the residents regarding construction requirements. The province's letters will consider properties fall generally under 4 categories. Option 1 can proceed with construction without further responsibilities under the Heritage Conservation Act. Option 2, there will be an overlap with protected archaeological sites. And while authority must be obtained under the HCA, once that has been arranged, work can continue. And option 3 is that there's overlap with a protected site and further work is required. This kind of goes with where we were looking at where sites had been remediated or blocks had been remediated and we knew roughly where archaeological sites are. And this is helping us refine not only the archaeological site boundaries, but also what's located within each subject property. The intent being most properties will move from option 3 to option 1 or option 2. And option 4, we are using where it doesn't fall within one of those processes. This means that we anticipate archaeological sites will be found on your property, but processes are in place to ultimately allow you to build. If something is very significant, you may be encouraged to consider development approaches like slab on grade construction, helical piles, or reusing your original footprint. If you have questions about this process or what steps are required to get clearance to rebuild on your property, residents are encouraged to contact the village directly. All Heritage Conservation Act permits required from the province are in place to complete the current work once these steps are taken, and we work quite closely with Dawn, your recovery manager. Residents can contact the archaeology branch if they have questions about the Heritage Conservation Act or to learn more about the necessary steps. But we're hoping to consolidate this and work directly with the recovery manager that will help make things easier for residents. As the archaeology work is complete on property, some residents have been receiving letters from the archaeology branch. And if residents have any questions about building permits, we encourage you to contact the village. Lytton's archaeologists and the archaeology branch coordinate with the Lytton First Nation, the Nlakatlu Nation Tribal Council, and other affected nations on any and all archaeological findings. Out of respect to the process and the First Nations, we're not providing a report on the specific findings at this time. So those are my updates. Thank you very much for your time. Dawn or Ted, is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
Hi, Paula, Ted here. No, thank you very much. That was a great update. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paula.
My pleasure.
Okay, and so next on our agenda is Patrick Michel, and Patrick is going to give us an update on the building symposium. There we go. Thanks, Patrick. Over to you.
Thanks, everybody. I want to express my deep gratitude before I get into my update. I thought about rolling a whole bunch of pictures. I thought about putting a bunch of diagrams in. You know what the best possible way is? We gathered for 2 days and it worked. Now I'm going to give you the numbers. I'm going to give you some stats. Just telling you here, I showed up at 7:30 in the morning. There were people there. I was there at 5 o'clock. There were people there. You know, when you gather Lyttonites together in one place, they show up early, they work through lunch, and they stayed late, and they didn't even want to leave Saturday. It worked. If the purpose was to bring us together as one, it worked. So let's look then. So my first report then is on participation. For those of you who don't know, there was a sign-in sheet at the door. And this lady showed up and says, "What can I do to help?" And I made her do sign-in sheet. And she was amazing. And I'd say we captured about 1 out of every 4 people. I'm not saying there was a large neon sign that says sign in here. Sign in was pure voluntary. And over the 2 days, we had 162 people sign in. But you all know it was well more attended than that. As I watched people come in and they had to make a decision, do they want to be known as attending this event? And the reason why I'm not showing any pictures is for the same reason. People came not because they wanted to be seen. People didn't come in because they wanted to be known because they're signing. People came in because they wanted to know something. And I really think that worked. For me, I saw people come in and they went to the tables and they went to the presentations and they didn't leave. They went out and bought bannock, brought to you by the family, the Indigenous family who came up from Chilliwack. And for those people who are not comfortable with bannock, they went out and bought hot dogs from the guy that came up from Chilliwack. We had food trucks there and it worked. People came in, they sat, they visited. I saw people sitting after they finished for hours, just visiting. I saw Ernie. I hadn't seen Ernie in years. And I won't use last names, at least I hope not. I saw my friends and I saw my family. And I saw people that I grew up with. It worked. Of the participants, I wanted to mention just about the people of the 162 and the 300 plus. That's my number. Thank you. Thank you for coming through Facebook, through whatever. And if you know what, if the fact that people started showing posters of the bannock, if that got you there, it worked. So thank you. Now let's get into some of the who showed up. 15 Intlakatman communities make up the region. My update is I saw people from Spuzzum, Boston Bar, Boothroyd, Kanak Bar, Scuppa, Elephant, Nickaman, Coldwater, Cooksbury Band, Lower Nicolean Band, and Shakin and Newayach there. Not everybody signed in. Of the people who signed in, the most were Lytton First Nations. Now, I didn't count that. Maybe somebody's going to play the report. So how many of the Intlakatman communities showed up? Almost all of them. For that, I thank them. What you'll find, though, is that I'm going to break the communities now into Statliam. Okay, Statliam. So thank you very much for Yvonne saying, acknowledging where you're calling in, as well as the people at Center Point. Now that we see them, it turns out it's Mike and, right? Silk, Okanagan. They were there. Did you guys know that? They were there. Why were the Okanagans in the room? Because what we're presenting wasn't just about Lytton's recovery and rebuild. It was options and alternatives that applied to the Okanagans, that applied to the Shuswaps, that applied to the Statliam. There were so many people from Lillooet there, you could have shook a stick at it. I'm sure Tim Hortons went bankrupt for Saturday. Too many people from Lillooet and Lytton. We couldn't compete with the Lillooet program on the Friday, but we certainly got them on the Saturday. The people from Lillooet were here. From the Shuswaps, the one that blew me away is, I don't know how many people know, because you know what? We had chiefs from other communities at this event, but we also had leaders from other communities as well, municipal, regional. It was amazing. From the Stalos, we had the First Nations. Now, how many people saw, I mean, just as an example, why in gosh's name is the Chilliwack Rotary Club showing up in 3 vehicles? What's in it for them? For those people who saw and I should maybe show that picture, this little old lady from the Chilliwack Rotary Club saying, look, the Rotary Club internationally can help. One of the things they suggested was call the other communities for Rotary Clubs, or how did they overcome some of the challenges? The Chilliwack Rotary Club was there because they build infrastructure And they wanted to find out how can they build infrastructure that is resilient to heat, wind, rain, and cold. So they worked the tables, they listened to the presentations. One other thing that is funny, and I call them why they were here to blame me, I don't know. I think the people from Alberta who were physically present were here because we don't get a lot of hail and we don't get a lot of tornadoes. That's so Alberta. So they wanted to understand if some of the materials and the companies that were there could help them with their extreme weather events. I've seen the photos of hailstorms in Alberta. And today, how many tornadoes hit down? How many? No matter where we are in Canada, we're experiencing our own extreme weather events. And what we rolled out on that day was alternatives and options. It's up to whoever you are, the family, the individual, the corporation, the society, the municipality, the regional district, the provincial and federal governments. You have to pick what you're going to do in terms of your building. And all we wanted to do on May 19th and 20 was show you that alternatives to the norm exist. And I hope you pick the one that best suits your needs. The one from Ontario, the two people from Ontario, trust me, why they were there, I don't know. Maybe they were like tourists. They're lost. They're Googled. They said they couldn't find the Coquihalla. There were people from Ontario there. Virtually, we had people participating from the East Coast before the wildfires hit. We had national attention. Thank you for all those people who come in. The door prizes, I'll talk with Yvonne because the door prizes I broke down to just name and community. And I think I'll send it to Yvonne to see whether or not she say, look, because we want to share that. Door prizes were great. We want to thank each and every one of the people who donated door prizes. And I'll share that with Yvonne. And Yvonne, she's a great editor, so she'll make that available. We can put it on the YouTube site. We can put it on the mayor's next meeting. But that was just, for those people who won hats or cups, congratulations. I'm still delivering them. But at the same time, I'm thinking, but if the recovery staff have moved up to the mill site, maybe they can mail the last ones out for us. So thank you for the tables. Of the tables, I'd hope that we would get 40 tables. We got 44 from all over BC and Alberta. Now, how many people went and talked to the guy from Alberta who drove here, who actually has an extruder? So his building model is he's going to use 3D modeling. Did anybody go talk to him? I did. He came here from Alberta because he said, look, one of the solutions to building back Lytton is let's put a giant robot and it extrudes. I should probably watch the videos. It was amazing. I think here that of the tables that were there, some of them, I mean, I forgot to go grab the free hats and cups and pens. I hope you did, took advantage of the goodies. But they came because they wanted to showcase their solutions, their building envelopes. And I hope for the people who came there that they showed that. Now let's look. If one of the purposes was to bring people together, you guys remember, I've always said there are 5 governments. 5 governments at play. All righty. Maybe it's the wrong way to do it, but let's start this way. Let's go with the federal government. Do you remember Brad V showed up visually in a video and it was great? Finally, he says. Yvonne, I don't know if do I send the videos to you or do I send it to CAO? Who uploads to, so just a quick question, who uploads these videos to YouTube?
Yeah, no, send them to the communications or we can set up a Dropbox, Patrick. So I'll reach out to you after this.
Okay, that's great. So the videos are in. So what happens is during the first presentation, I invited the 5 governments to show up and they did. But it wasn't just the fact that our member of parliament was there, Brad Vees. We also had representatives of Pacific Can, Natural Resources Canada, Indigenous Services Canada, and the Federal Minister of Environment. The federal government was in the house. Now I'm probably going in the wrong order, and you guys can give me chat room grief later about saying, let's prioritize something. Somebody that blew me away from the province was that our MLA stayed almost all day Saturday, Friday, but she had something to do. Our MLA, Jackie Teegert, who is not in the elected official, was there all day, and she's been championing the Lytton. If anybody know how to shake a stick at Rolly Russell, it's MLA Jackie Teegert. And she was there in person and she spoke. In the room, we had, of course, Minister of Health representatives as well as Interior Health representatives. We had Minister of Environment, Mark Armis, one of the presentations. He's with the Minister of Environment provincially. He opened up the first presentation. We had MOTI there. Now, again, not everybody signed in, but because we know them. You guys know people that were there from the federal and provincial government, so they just didn't want you to know because they were showing up with their British Columbian hats. They were parents and they were grandparents. Not everybody wanted to be there in their official capacity. I was so pleased to see them. One of my favorite people was a retired MOTI worker who basically said, we identified those culverts years ago, and there's also a regional water plan, right? Of course, he has to decide if he's going to rebuild his house, him and his wife. Apparently, they received an archaeological letter while they were there. I'd never seen anybody smile so much. So I don't know. It turns out the Ministry of Archaeology must be emailing those letters out digitally, because boy, were they laughing when they left. They got their archaeological letter. Whether or not they applied for a building permit or not, that's up to them. But they got a letter. And I didn't know it was letter 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's between them, the archaeological branch, and Ron Dickinson, as far as I heard. They were very happy. They talked and shared for hours before they went back to their home in Ashcroft. I hope that they are one of the first people who rebuild. They're a big part of our community, and I'd be very happy to see them come back and rebuild. Fingers crossed there. Federal, provincial. We had the regional district there. As you recall, we had Patricia Thorpe there. I think she came both days, but Patricia also came with staff from the TNRD. So when the regional district, that's 3 governments. We've got the federal government, we've got the provincial government, now we have a regional district. Now both the regional district and village of Lytton may be creatures, children, grandchildren of the provincial government under some enabling act. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer anymore. How do I know whose children is who? The point is the regional district is in the house for 2 days, and they listened and they shared. And when we gave them a microphone, they gave it us. I remember one of my favorite lines was, the recovery of Lytton is challenging because it's the chicken before the egg. Do you build accommodation for people who have no services, or do you build services for people who have no accommodation? That's what the chicken and egg is. Good luck with that. That was a Sunday conversation where, of course, communications will receive that from a Dropbox and can upload it for you if you've missed it. I don't know what's going to come first. I'm hoping anyone. I know that when this council was elected, they didn't know, but their fingers were crossed that we could start building in the spring of 2023. Now, are we in the spring of 2023 or are we in the summer? Is that changed on the 23rd? Because apparently the soul is lifting on the 19th. So even if you're not rebuilding, I hope you're sitting down on your lot with a lawn chair and saying, it's good to be back home like the Deans. Oops, sorry, I meant to use only first names. They don't have no water, they don't have no sewage, but they're home. And for that, I'm happy, because I've never gotten so much grief from one guy with a cane. I'm assuming that was Mr. Dean, and he was a big part of the event. And he enjoyed, and he shared, and he listened, and he believed. Now, when it came down to mayor and council, showed up early, stayed late, first people there, last people to leave. And for that, to the mayor and council of the village of Lytton, you were there when the people of Lytton needed you. And there's no greater leader than those people who will take a Friday and Saturday out of their lives. For those of you who don't know, pretty much council works for negative, and the mayor at least gets $5 a week. I don't know. Read a financial statement. Your chief and council, your mayor and council basically work for nothing. And yet they spent 2 days of their lives at a community so that you could approach them. I've never seen council work so hard and smile so hard and greet people. Because when people come in and they see their leaders present, it makes them feel good. Chiefs. Now, we didn't have a room full of chiefs, which is probably a good thing because there's an old saying, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. But enough chiefs showed up. And for that, I am grateful. When LFN Chief Nakaya Hanna spoke, right, when Chief Jordan Spink spoke, right, you didn't need to sit down and spend, all day Saturday, giving the microphone to Chief. 2 is enough, in it. I need to double check to see if there are more, but I'm just telling you that my heart was in my throat with pride and happiness. The federal government, the provincial government, the regional government, the municipal government, and the Indigenous government all showed up. And as far as I'm concerned, for the first time in the history of British Columbia, 5 governments were in the same room at the same time, and they didn't come because of the Bannock. They came because Lytton called and our governments answered. And if that was one of the purposes of the May 19th and 20th, it worked. And they stayed. Now, I didn't see Rolly, but you know what? Rolly's been attending every meeting since I remember, since I'd say July 1st. Right? So when you look at this, everybody's been watching, everybody's been trying to support in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, too many cooks spoil the soup. In a short period of time, we seem to have resolved the contaminated soil issue. We seem to resolve the archaeological issues, but it took time. Never once did I hear any one of you leaders say patience, because if you told anybody displaced from Lytton be patient, you would have been throttled. So good on you. Choose your language correctly. Right? We're not all Michael Blaschuk. Right? He has tact and diplomacy, at least in public, but behind closed doors, that's a man that gets stuff done. And that's what him and Dawn have done. They've given us a chance to start construction this summer. And for that, I thank you. Right? I'm looking forward to your update tonight, because obviously the working of the water and sewage systems is critical, because if we're coming up from external, you can't turn it all on at once. So I know that Michael and Dawn are working hard, especially with the city of Kamloops, to get our water and sewers going. Thank you. In terms of the media, now this is interesting. School District 74 released its barrier, and so we had BC TV and CBC present. Now, I don't recall anybody had any cameras, but I seen some of the stories afterwards. The media was reporting that there's still some frustration about the lack of progress and the lack of building. But you know what they all said? That was a really good event. And remember, I'm reporting on May 19th and 20th. If you have a bunch of people who are supposed to be giving good news stories, basically chase the same narrative, at least the BC TV person said, but you know what? It was a really good event. And it was a really good event. CBC is back on Monday and Tuesday. Why? I don't know. But obviously, British Columbians are watching the Lytton story. Canada's watching the Lytton story. BBC has covered us. The Washington Post has covered us. The world is watching the Lytton recovery. And I can tell you this, they're going to be so amazed at what's happening. I know that Rolly on his own, or with Jackie behind him, I was going to say kicking, because that's not nice. It's basically encouraging words. The province will help us further, as will the feds. A big part of the event was when 5 governments get together and they collaborate on a common cause, it's amazing what we're going to do. But our challenge for the federal and provincial governments is that the 3 governments, the local governments, have to determine the projects that they want help with. I believe our federal government will provide more assistance down the road. I believe our provincial government will do the same. But they're not here, as Ernie Michel from Siska said. We're not here to do what you're going to tell us to. We're here to tell you what we're going to do. This is our home. This is our region. And we're going to have a made by Lyttonites, for Lyttonites, by Lyttonites recovery plan. And if we can secure funding and assistance, that's going to be great. So I know that we're working hard on projects. last night, apparently staff were told to go investigate the feasibility of something or other. Sorry, I wasn't there last night. I was on the road, so I'm looking forward to watching last night's meeting. It's probably involved Michael Blaschuk again. We can, if we find the right projects, we can get the support. Now for today, I got a call today from a person passing through town. Hi, I'm rich with a lot of money and I want to do something amazing for Lytton. And I went to the village center and there's a chain on there. So why would you call me? I'm supposed to be writing a really cool PowerPoint for this meeting at 6 o'clock that I signed into, but didn't get until 6:29, no worries. Because for crazy enough reasons, for a guy that's retired, people still phone me. And I took him through town and I showed him the elementary school grounds and I showed him the properties. I showed him the airport, right? I showed him the mill site. There are people out there who want to help. This is different. Maybe there's impact investors, maybe there's philanthropy. But what you're going to need is a point of first contact. And every time somebody says, who do I call if I want to talk to somebody? I say, Michael Blaschuk. That's what a recovery manager does, right? If you've got money, Mike will tell you where to spend it. With a recovery manager, and the point is, Mike is bringing in a level of credibility that is incredible. If you look at Mike's CV and stuff like this and how he's presenting, when you have a team that can deliver, people will come. There's no risk to the rebuild of Lytton. In my view, most people will think there is a risk, but I think not. I believe that my town will be rebuilt. The facilities and the services that we lost will come back. It won't be the same. It can't be the same. It shouldn't be the same. Why? Lytton burnt for a reason. Finally, papers. I don't read the paper, but apparently we made the Lillooet paper. So if anybody can send me a clip or say, Facebook, I heard we made the Lillooet paper. I'm not sure. I just never thought that maybe Lillooet has a digital copy. But you know what? I've always enjoyed reading the Lillooet paper. I just haven't got a place to buy it anymore. That'll end soon. Videos you've heard already that they're going to be up and running. So I'm going to figure out how to do a Dropbox. I have them on a Dropbox, but I don't know how to forward a Dropbox. So I'm going to contact the company. And
That's
so
right. We can do that after, Patrick. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we can wrap up a little bit. I've got a couple more speakers to go.
But you also have till 8 o'clock. I know. I'm just saying here is if you want me to say, if the purpose of the event was to gather and learn and share, it was met. And I'm going to thank all of you for providing me with that opportunity to lead that. And I'm looking forward to whatever comes next for our hometown. So there, wrapped up. Thanks, Yvonne. Good moderating.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was amazing. It was an amazing couple of days for the community. So our next speaker is still on the same theme, and that is about rebuilding and building permits. So I'm just going to ask Ron to unmute. There we go, Ron Dickinson.
Yeah, here we are, everybody. And Patrick, that was inspirational. Thank you. You'll see there's no presentation tonight from me. There's no PowerPoints. There's no nothing as far as the technical side of this thing goes. I just wanted to encourage everybody to come to me and Lynn Berlin, who are both going to be doing the building permit issuance, the reviews, all the work. We have phone numbers, we have contact information, and our objective, both of us, for our whole career, but here too, is to get to yes. So you're going to get your permit. You're going to get your house. You're going to get what you want because we'll find a way to do it. And as Patrick said earlier, it won't be quite the same, but you're going to be there. And we want to encourage everybody to talk to us because there's all this technical stuff that sort of clogs the pipeline of getting where you want to go. And there's also variable circumstances on every lot. It might be the archaeological, it might be how close you want your house to the property lines. It might be any one of a number of other things. How big you're, how high, how low, whatever. But there's a way to yes, and we'll get there. And you know, this is 2 years I've been here, and it's kind of emotional to get along as far as having the soul removed. And we've got everything ready to go, and we will get the permits out as soon as you come in. And I know there's people that are not, haven't got a plan yet. They don't know what they want. They just want what they have, but you need it on paper. You need to be able to describe that to us, even if it is pencil drawings or just verbally talking about it. Where is it? How big is it? We need that kind of information to get you started. And if that's all you got, the phone will get you started. So I didn't want to make a presentation that night. I didn't want to clog up the pipes with technical jargon and all that sort of stuff. And I won't do it on the phone, and neither will Lynn. We'll talk to you in vernacular, just in whatever conversation style we need to get the information from you and back to you once we've sort of chewed it over. But that will happen. That can happen on the telephone. That can happen in any other kind of conversation. We'll take your point and we'll talk about it immediately, give you some objectives and some alternatives. And there's council's been working like hard at finding faster ways to process things. And we buried them in papers to try and make the technological and the legal requirements simpler. We're there. We have some more things to do. Sorry, council, but we'll be back at you with another bomb of papers. But it's all to help people move through this system more quickly. So I guess enough said tonight. I'll be around for the question and answer, and I look forward to hearing you on the phone, to kicking some dirt in your yard, and doing some work. So please let us know. Give us a call. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ron. And yes, thanks for being on the call for some Q&A. So I'm sure that some questions may come in. I'm just going to move over now to the homeowner program. This is the Lytton Homeowner Resilient Rebuild Program from Pacific Can. So we've got a couple speakers here with us today. So we've got Clayton Cooper and we have Jane. So let me get them all pinned for you. Hi, Jane. And you've got a couple more, right? You've got Lucas too.
Yeah.
There we go. Over to you, you guys.
Great. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here this evening. Thanks for having us, and what an amazing milestone to be part of this with you, and it's very exciting. So we're here to talk about one of the two Pacific Can programs that was announced. So we're here, as Yvonne, as you mentioned, to speak about the Lytton Homeowner Resilient Rebuild Program. I do have a PowerPoint, so I'm just going to share my screen here. There we go. Do you see it okay?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, so just a bit of an overview of what we're going to be sharing this evening. So just for those of you who are at the Amazing Building Symposium that Patrick organized, this will look very familiar to you. So we're going to give you an overview of the program. Can you introduce Pacific Can and its partners? That's why I have pleased to have Lucas joining me, as well as some expert builders, Clayton and Jordan, to answer some questions. So we're going to speak about fire resilient and net zero components of homes. So Lucas is going to walk you through those pieces, talk a little bit about the program, how it works, next steps for applying for the program, and then we'll be available for questions, which I think will be at the end. Okay, so in this first slide here, really just wanting to make this is a new program for Pacific Can. I think it's new for government. We absolutely needed partners to bring this, to design this program. So we reached in, we worked very closely with Natural Resources Canada. We also work very closely with the Canada Home Builders Association in Central Interior. it was critical that we understood the building context in Lytton and had the opportunity to meet with builders, and also really critical that we engaged experts in the area of fire resilience. So these were key pieces. So I think that was where we wanted to start this presentation, just conveying that it certainly wasn't Pacifican on its own. We really leaned into our partners. And here's a picture, and some of you I know were able to join us on this day in Kamloops, where we had the builder's charrette. Lucas, who will be speaking, he led builders through a session just going through the modeling work that NRCan had done to look at what does it cost to build a fire resilient home? What does it cost to build a net zero home? And looking at these costs over and above a standard rebuild. And the focus here was looking at the modeling and looking at, well, what does it cost to do this in Lytton? So that's what we spent this day in early February doing a bit of testing. And then another key piece of the grant that I'm going to talk about in a little bit was just understanding the fire resilient components as well. So NRCan reached into experts in the area to help us with that costing piece. So in terms of what is this program? It is intended to support Lytton homeowners build back better. It's that I was speaking to it just in the previous slide. It's about addressing those fire resilient costs, those net zero costs over and above the basic rebuild. So this is the top up grant that Pacifican is coming to support to help build those more durable homes and those more fire resilient homes. In terms of who is eligible for the program, this is something, and I'd like to think we've had early engagement and we've had conversations and we've had the good fortune to come and speak to you before, and we've had feedback. So that feedback is reflected in the final outcome. So the good input and guidance from the mayor, from councillors, and from Regional Director Tricia Thorpe, we looked at the boundaries. What are the boundaries of this program and who's eligible for? So we can say that it's for owners of residential property. So all owners. Insurance is no longer, we spoke to in the last session about insurance being a requirement. It is no longer required that for a homeowner to apply for a program that they have insurance. And then another element is the jurisdiction of it. I think at first the conversation was on the village. Now we're clear that it's the village and the 15-kilometer radius around the village. Then there's the question, it doesn't include reserve land, because here's where we work with our partners, Indigenous Services Canada, who have the direct relationship with the nations and with the tribal councils. So the other key elements for eligibility, it's about helping homeowners who had a home that was destroyed. And it's homeowners who are building back a primary residence and want to build to these fire resilience and these net zero standards. And I liked how Ron framed that everybody's in, you meet these eligibility requirements, and you're interested in this program, we'll find we really want to work with you and help you get to the program. In terms of what does the program offer, I think I've been touching on it, but just to really be clear, it is a top-up grant. So there's no repayment, it's not a loan, it's at the end of the build, there's funding available for a homeowner's choice of fire resilient or fire resilient and net zero. And I'm going to turn to Lucas in a little bit to speak about those two components. And here, I'm going to turn to Lucas now.
Thanks, Jane. I think as Patrick mentioned earlier in his speaking, we need to build back better. And one of those ways that we're doing it through this program is to build back fire resilient. And a part of this program is to construct your home in such a way that we can prevent damage and buy valuable time for evacuation in the event of a fire. And we can do this to our home through a few different ways. One of them is by choosing non-combustible materials. A good example of that is the material that we use for our roofs. So selecting metal or asphalt roofing will lead to a non-combustible solution on your roof. There's also design features such as enclosing your gutters and eaves. So we just want to make sure that areas of the home where embers can penetrate, we want to close them up and prevent that from happening. Go to the next slide, please, Jane. Here are a few examples of what fire resilient measures could look like. These are included in the fire resiliency checklist that is part of the Pacifican program. It's not exhaustive. There are a few other ones that are in the checklist that you're not seeing here, but you can see that we're making recommendations on how to construct both your roof. There's recommendations on your windows. In this case, we suggest going with tempered outer pane of your window. When the windows get really hot, they tend to kind of explode, and having a tempered layer of glass there will always ensure that you have a physical barrier between the fire outside and the home inside. Similarly, we're looking at putting metal. We want metal screens to be installed on windows to, in the event that you leave a window open and there's embers flying through the air, you still have that protective barrier. So those are just a few examples of how we can make our houses more fire resilient. And on top of that, it's good to know that it's not complicated. It's not super expensive. And the benefit to making your home fire resilient, as everyone knows, is very, very important for us to consider. So in addition to protecting the house and the structure itself, we also want to consider the people living in it. And so part of our program is to build back better in the form of net zero energy. And there's a number of benefits that come with building back a net zero home. A few of them here are listed on the screen. One of them is greater comfort and healthier living. Net zero homes are extremely durable. They're built with high quality materials and construction practices, and that ultimately leads to a better living experience. The rooms in your house are more comfortable in terms of temperature. You can stand next to that window in the middle of winter and not feel the heat get sucked off of you. In addition to that, there's also strict standards for net zero housing on your air quality. So there's machines in the house that improve the ventilation and keep the pollutants and the bad stuff outside and allow you to breathe clean quality air inside. On top of the comfort and the living quality, it reduces costs. Net zero homes have very, very low energy requirements. And on top of that, there's solar panels on the house. So those solar panels are meant to generate electricity and offset a huge amount of your energy costs. Lastly, it's environmentally responsible. We reduce the amount of energy we use in homes, and that's a good thing for the environment at large. Go to the next slide, please, Jane. If you might have to click a few buttons here, but as we go through this slide, there's a number of components of the home that affect the amount of energy it uses. Anything from the insulation in your roof to the type of windows you have to the type of heating system that you use. And our goal with this program is to find ingredients, find a recipe, what we call it, to construct your home in such a way that it uses the minimal amount of energy as possible, and that we're reducing your energy bills to almost zero at the end of the day. Go to the next slide, please, Jane. So energy efficiency in housing is improving across Canada. It's a federal objective to improve the quality of homes that Canadians live in. Homes built before 1990, they have experienced, they're part of the learnings as we move through this, how do we build better homes? And as a result, they have slightly poorer energy efficiency than newer homes that we're seeing today. As a result of that, it means it costs a little bit more money to operate them. So to keep them cool in the summer and to keep them warm in the winter. Minimal insulation, and you have kind of uncomfortable rooms. BC Step 3 homes. So this is the standard that everyone in British Columbia is required to build to today. With a Step 3 home, they have excellent energy efficiency. They typically use about 50% less energy than that home that was built in 1990 or earlier. They also have extremely high quality construction practices and improved comfort. Now, above and beyond a Step 3 home, which is fantastic as it is a net zero home. And there's a few differences between the net zero and the Step 3 home. And a majority of that comes down to how the energy is produced. A net zero home relies a lot less on the grid and more on the sun. So when the sun is shining, you're producing electricity to use inside your house at zero cost. Additionally to that, there's extra requirements around the comfort, the health, and resilience of net zero homes that go above and beyond Step 3. Next slide, please, Jane. So both net zero and Step 3, they both require the use of an energy advisor. As of May 1st, 2023, all municipalities in British Columbia have to build to Step 3, and part of the requirements to build to BC Energy Step Code Step 3 require the use of an energy advisor in your design process. We want them typically they're involved at the beginning of the process, so that way you can achieve your Step 3 target as easily as possible. Now, something to highlight is that both net zero and Step 3 homes take the same amount of time for the design and construction of it. If that's something you decide to do, understanding that it takes the same amount of time if you decide to make that decision at the beginning. So when you're thinking about what type of house you want to build, whether you want to engage in this program or not, it's important to decide at the outset if you want to go for a net zero home, a fire resilient home, or both, because that will ensure that the construction process doesn't take any additional time. Lastly, a few more points on net zero homes. They're built with more durable and energy efficient materials. Net zero homes are popping up across Canada, and everyone who lives in a net zero home is very, very happy with the quality of the home that's constructed, their ability to sit anywhere in the house, to feel comfortable, to be able to breathe clean air, especially those with breathing issues, perhaps. And they use 80% less grid energy than a step 3 house. And so you're looking at significant energy savings from what your current house was, even above and beyond what the current BC law is. So net zero homes are super beneficial to homeowners in many, many ways. And we have a few people here with us to kind of speak to that. And Jane mentioned earlier that we've brought Clayton and Jordan with us this evening, and they're both quite experienced net zero builders. And maybe if I could just ask a couple of questions to Clayton and Jordan here, just kind of give their perspective on net zero building. I know for folks in the room, a big concern is, is it going to take more time to design and construct a net zero home? And is it more risky? So Clayton, I know, could you comment maybe on the amount of time it takes to design these homes and in your experience?
Thanks, Lucas. Like you mentioned in the slide before, you're going to have to hire an energy advisor, whether you're doing step 3 net zero or net zero ready. So the time frame is the exact same, and the course of construction is going to basically take the same amount of time to build the house.
Awesome. Thanks, Clayton. And then, for net zero houses, we know that we put solar panels on the roof. I don't know if Jordan or Clayton, could you comment on solar panels? And is there any maintenance required to them? What's their typical lifespan? And, are we seeing them being installed reliably?
Yeah, so now with the solar panels, they warranty them for 25 years. It's not like the old days where you had to have a big battery backup system to hold the energy. That's all gone now. You're tied right into the grid. So as you're producing power, when you're at home, it's going into your house. When you're away from home, it's just going back into the grid. And then when you're using power and your solar is not producing enough, then you're just pulling power in from the grid. So it basically just offsets either way. So without the battery system and having all the cells and inverters built right into the panels themselves, there's no maintenance on the solar panels. And with being warranted for 25 years, you're basically guaranteed for 25 years to have no maintenance. There is some minor maintenance. I mean, if you live in an area where you got a lot of trees that have leaves, I'm sure you're going to want to upkeep on getting the debris off of them, or big heavy snowfalls. I mean, Kamloops, it snows a little bit and then it warms up the next day, and the solar panels are black, so it melts off fairly easy, just depending on the area and elevation that you're at.
That's great. Thanks, Clayton. Jordan, did you have anything to add to that?
Unfortunately, Jordan wasn't able to make it tonight.
Okay.
So yeah.
Not to worry. Thanks, Clayton. Well, I know Clayton will be around here as for the question and answer period. And so if we had any, Jordan, I see him there. If anyone has any questions for Clayton, Clayton is a net zero builder in the central interior region, and he'd be more than happy to answer them throughout the rest of this evening. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jane to continue our presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Lucas and Clayton. So for the next few slides, really just want to take you through the program. And I think we've been talking about the options. So the homeowner has a choice, in this program, building fire resilient or fire resilient in net zero. So here we speak about pathways. So under pathway 1 is a fire resilient only. In the grant for homeowners choosing to go this route, it's a $10,000 grant. And you get that upon completion of meeting the fire resilient program requirements. And Lucas referred to that earlier. Through the development of the program, we worked with consultants and have a checklist. I think it also included engaging with the village and looking at the village bylaw that has been developed over time and working with national standards. So and getting guidance from builders. So that checklist is the guidance. So upon completion of the build, homeowners are eligible for the $10,000 grant. Looking at pathway 2, that's the fire resilient and net zero construction. Here, there's 2 payments that homeowners will receive going this pathway. The first is the design grant. We understand, and Clayton and Lucas were both speaking to the design elements and the step of designing the net zero home. Upon completion of that design, homeowners will get, again, meeting the program requirements, will get a $5,000 grant. And then homeowners have that choice again to build net zero ready or net zero, with the difference between the two being whether or not the energy system is installed. And some may get through the design phase and make the determination, I don't want to build net zero, I want to do fire resilient. So that option is absolutely there through the program. And in terms of what the value of the grant is, it does differ. We recognize, and you'll see that the 2 homes where Lucas walked you through the different components, it's recognized that the costing of the differential costing includes both variable costs and fixed costs. So the variable cost is $24 a square foot, and the square footage is tied to the size of the home before the fire, and then the fixed cost of $12,500, and then that goes up to the same square footage amount, so $24 a square foot, plus $45,000 for the full net zero. So for those who do install the energy system. So here's an example of what that looks like. You know, it's kind of hard to get a sense of what does the overall value look like. So looking at example 1 as it's laid out here, this is full net zero. So here we show the design grant of $5,000, the fire resilience component of $10,000. And then when you apply the formula of the $24 per square foot plus the $45,000, that gets to $71,000 for a total amount for the homeowner coming to $86,400. For homeowners choosing to do net zero ready, so not installing that energy system, the breakdown is the same, the design and the fire resilience. And then the piece that changes here, it's the net zero ready amount instead of the net zero amount. So that brings the total grant to $53,900. And then for those choosing to build fire resilient only and completing those components, this is the $10,000. And this isn't tied, there's no tie to the size of the home before. It's a fixed amount of $10,000. So then just taking you through in terms of what does that look like. And I want to reiterate that Pacific Can, we're here to work with homeowners through the whole process. So the first step is to review eligibility. And as a homeowner, if you meet the eligibility and you're interested in this program, to reach into us, we'll give you an application and start working on the application. And then the first step is to select the pathway. If you're choosing fire resilient, and here we're walking through the fire resilient pathway, and then submit your application. We recognize that as part of the planning of your build, you need to know upfront and have that agreement with Pacifican in terms of the value of the grant amount upfront. So this step is completed very early in our program. And then the next step is to prepare the building requirements. Ron spoke to that earlier. There's the archaeology components, and then there's the building permit components. So the homeowner will go through those pieces. And then it's going through the build, and from the program perspective, making sure that those fire resilient components are completed, and the builder will attest to that and sign off on that. And then once that's complete, the homeowner submits that to Pacifican, and then we process the $10,000 grant. So taking you through the steps for pathway 2 within the net zero option, we've just highlighted same steps. The difference here is the amounts, recognizing the design, the build, and also the design grant. So here in step 3, you see that there's the design grant that's available upon completion of designing the net zero home. And at the end, in terms of the distinction, is the program requirements, which are tied to, and we referred to at the beginning, the partnership with the Canada Home Builders Association and working with the standards that they've established. So in terms of once the home is certified as net zero using the CHBA standards, and once Pacifican receives that, they're positioned to process the grant. So in terms of next steps and applying for the programs, we did, I hope that everybody saw that 2 weeks ago, the program launched and opened for applications. It'll stay open for applications until June 14th of next year. We recognize the build won't be complete by that time, but it's about having people apply to the program. So just please apply, please reach into us. For those who haven't reached out to us already, we're happy to provide you with an application package for you to determine your program pathway that you choose. And if you are interested, I'll pop it in the chat after the call because I've got my screen up. It's a bit hard for me to, but I can pop in the chat. The CHBA has on their website a list of net zero builders if you're interested, and they're adding to it. So if there is a builder who is not net zero certified, they can work with the CHBA to become certified. I think what we learned this week, we're excited to learn that in Kamloops, I think there were no net zero builders before we started talking with the program, and now there's 12. So that's pretty exciting, and I think it's a growing number. So I encourage if there's any builders who want to get trained and be net zero certified, that there's a pathway to do that. So just quickly wanted to touch on, and again, this is all the information we'll share with you. It is available on our website, but in terms of getting ready to apply for the program, there's a number of documents you'll need to bring together. You just need to know that it's you, so some proof of identity, proof of existence of the size of the property that was lost. BC Property Assessment has this data, so that's easily accessible through BC Property Assessment. Proof of ownership of the home, so that's either through stated title or an attestation from insurance, and then providing us with your application form. So just get in touch with us. We look forward to connecting with, we've enjoyed the connections we've made to date and look forward to connecting with more of you. Use our program email that's here on the slide. Visit our website. There's lots of information there. We're happy to meet with you. We'll meet with you by phone, virtually. We were so thrilled to come, and Mike, thank you for welcoming us into the temporary village office last week. We look forward to doing more of that and finding a time that works, connecting with the village and connecting with the regional district in terms of timing and what makes sense. So that brings us to the end of our presentation for the evening.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was a lot of great information. We have just one more presentation. And that is from our recovery managers, from Mike and Dawn. So I think you just need to stop sharing your screen, Jane. There we go. I think you just need to unmic center point, and I'll bring Dawn up here too. Oh, you just muted up there. Oh, there you go. Perfect. We can hear you now.
We're working.
Do you want me to put the presentation up, John?
Yeah, yeah, appreciate getting at least the first slide, and I'll just I'll sort of give you signals on where to go from there. First of all, I did not pay Patrick to do the advertising and credit me with everything, because first of all, that's not true. We've accomplished a lot in the last 2 months because of the council, because of the mayor, because of Owen, because of Brian, because of TNRD, and because of LFN, and a lot of groups that have come together to help us move this. Mostly what we do is move things out of the way. That's what we focus on, moving things out of the way so that we can move the file, get things going, and be a lot quicker. We're a little bit challenging, and I would be remiss if I didn't give more credit to my business partner on this, is Don Wong, who you don't see often because he works out of Vancouver and I'm the face up here, but he's the one who's really, really, really busy right now and addressing most of these items. So, so I'll walk you through this slide. So I can pop the next, if we could flip to the next slide. So this was a slide deck we used at the symposium, and it was mostly to show that we're moving through a series of projects, really. The phase one was site cleanup, remediation, archaeology. Almost all the time was spent there. Little bits of time getting, utilities and services, housing, getting business and government services ready. It really was the focus. Now we're flipping into phase 2. We're in the rebuild. So we are sort of winding down elements there as we complete them. We're really focusing right now on getting the utilities and services going, getting the housing ready to be started, and starting to get ready to be able to support business and government services coming back. So that's our big shift right now. So, and I'll talk to each of the specific sections here. So I get the next slide. So the big things that have been happening is remediation scope. We corrected, and I have to tell you, we were concerned it was overscoped, and we still believe it was overscoped. We've got now in a situation where we think the right scope is there. We've got the majority of the properties now have been remediated to where they should be. There'll be a few stragglers we'll work on, but we can do those while we start getting ready for our backfill. So you also saw in the previous presentation archaeology, we're just getting the final archaeology reports. We can put everybody in the categories. We can start doing the backfills where we protect. If there are elements that we need to protect, we can protect those. If we've got something on a corner of your property, we'll work with people on fencing those areas off, but we still do the majority of work that needs to get done. We will follow and respect all the archaeological requirements. At the same time, we will keep this project moving and not be waiting for very specific areas. I mean, we have issues, not issues, but we have challenges to address on some ancestral remains. Key that we protect those. And so we will be reusing our sort of fencing to make certain we protect those areas while we commence works in the rest of the village. So right now we're actively preparing our work plan. I know Owen and Brian are going like crazy and we're getting ready to commence backfilling on what we call ready sites. So we've got a number of ready sites and we'll start moving those numbers up dramatically over the next month or two. But we're hoping that with no hiccups, we get our work plans in, we get everybody signed off, we can start backfilling in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So our intention is we're going to be reaching out to those owners that are ready, helping work individually on what the backfill plan looks like. Some owners will want to have, they may want to have a basement, so they want to have an area retained without fill. So we will make certain we fence that. We have to protect the public. It's an open excavation, and then we will backfill other areas around there. You saw the removal of state of local emergency. It was useful because it was a big site, had to fence the whole site and treat it as a site. The fences are going to start coming down. They're there to protect individuals from issues on the property that are open, if you've got an open excavation, but they're not to protect you from contamination. They're not to protect you from you don't have to roll up your windows anymore. So this is now moving into a construction project. And other than some of the backfill, this is going to start looking like a normal residential subdivision and construction project. And that's what you're going to see, the type of works that are very typical there. So I get the next slide. So you see a lot of work in BC Hydro. We're anticipating the main service should be complete this month. You've seen the poles gone up, the transformers are going up, the wiring is being strung right now, and that'll allow us to get everyone ready for hookup there. The boil water advisory was removed, very much thanks to Owen and Brian again, and also Kevin from Merit, who worked tirelessly to address some of the issues. It was on there for 7 months. They got on it once we removed some of the complications that had been put in front of them. They got it cleared really quick. They've also got the dam clear debris that was in there, so that allowed us to lift the water restrictions. Right now, we're preparing work plan for short-term repairs on utilities and services. We will be doing upgrades to the system, but we're not going to make you wait while we do that. We need to get the water and sewer and systems running so people can start their build, know they'll have connections. And then over the next 2 years, we will start replacing the components that need to be replaced. But at the same time, we're focusing on getting people back in their homes as a priority. And you're going to see fencing start to be repositioned. So that's going to happen again in the next 2 or 3 weeks. You'll see lots of stuff. We've also talked to the local school. Where the signs came down that said no stopping, keep your windows rolled up. We've asked the kids to create the signs for the rebuild, and it'll be a surprise. We don't know when we'll get it, but I can tell you next Friday I pick them up, and I can hardly wait to next Friday. So next slide. So again, now the shift becomes focusing on housing and housing solutions. So we met on this Monday. We met with BC Housing, with their director responsible for the whole broad area. We had previous discussions with the vice president responsible for all construction for BC Housing, and we had a meeting with ourselves, LFN, and the mayor, and we looked at what are the different strategies we can put in place to address uninsured owners. How do we create affordable rentals? What are some of the subsidized rental options we've got, and other options for non-market housing? And we had a very, I'd say, robust discussion, and it was very, I felt well supported by BC Housing. They're coming up with a number of options, so we now need to come back, work on the details, and follow up with them on looking at ways we can explore to access, whether it's much cheaper construction funds, whether it's takeout financing, whether it's operating grants, a number of ways that we can start working with them much closer. So we also hosted Pacific Camp public meetings in the new temporary recovery office. We will keep doing that. It's office open for them and other users. We've got Work BC is setting up some of the space we've got there to look at opportunities, but that's also a benefit to us because it allows us access to workers, and we're going to need those workers as we move forward. We encourage in our discussions, get your building permits in, get your building permits in, get your building permits in. It's going to start going pretty fast. And we're going to meet with property owners to customize backfill plans for their anticipated construction process. We're not just going in there wholesale, fill, and walk away. That's not the way it's going to go. It's going to be work on and dealing with some, and there's still some issues with some of the properties. There's some foundation pieces that were left in. We got to get those fixed. So people had their brick sidewalks taken out. We got to get those back in. So we got to sort of work with everyone to make certain what we bring back as much as possible. We can bring back what was there. Next slide. So business commercial. One of the things we have heard from businesses is in order to get the buildings back, we got to help with the viability. Are there ways? So we're starting investigating in our discussions with BC Housing whether there's ways to add mixed use housing to assist on commercial rebuilds that would support viability. There are, so we'll be doing some further exploration of that, and start working with potential proponents for business commercial construction on how we might be able to sort of combine to help tip the balance, so that if they're close to viability, there may be ways that we can help make those projects more viable. And also for them, we'll be working with them to commence backfill shortly as well. This isn't just on residential properties, it's also on the business commercial. The next slide. So we're also working on finalizing options for a temporary fire hall. We've got a generous donation, and we need to make certain we spend it well and wisely. We're also sort of discussing on how we need to take a more strategic approach to the fire hall. Is it a village fire hall, or is it broader Kumsheen fire group? And that stuff we'll be working with the village on coming up with different options that we could have there. So the temporary village hall is just about running. I've got to put an opening soon because people are coming down to pay a tax bill. We haven't quite got that part of it. We're using it for meetings, but we're not fully operational yet. I assume we'll have that in the next couple of weeks. Recovery office is open. If you come down there and it's locked, it's just because I've gone to the site and there's me and Owen and Brian occupying it right now. So I'm going to post my phone number on there, I think, in the next day or two. So if you come there and I'm not there, you'll have my number, you can phone me and I can come back. So we'll get some of these little hiccups we're working with. We're also was approved last night at council meeting application for funding from the federal government. There is substantial funding available. We need to put our marker down on it. We need to start asking for funds to start doing what they call a feasibility. It's whether it's feasible for them, not whether it's feasible for us. We know we have the viability for it, but it's to start working on getting the design of what those facilities will look like, which means a lot of consultations, because it's not
Thank you so much, Mike. That's so much fun and exciting news, and so great to have you right there on site in Lytton. So we're going to move now to our question and answer sections. I've got a few questions that were sent in advance, and I have some questions that I've grabbed from the chat. Feel free, if you'd like to speak at the meeting, to use the raise hand function. If there's someone on the call, or if there's someone not on the call that needs to answer the question, we will do that through the village newsletter and the website following the meeting. And we'll also post the answer to the questions from the meeting as well. So I'm just going to start with some that we had already captured. So I have an archaeological question. It did come in a while back, as we didn't have a community meeting during this. We had the symposium in May and not a community meeting. So some of this may have already been addressed, but I want to read it out. The question is, we have been told on several occasions that this archaeological sifting and digging is not in the village's hands and needs new provincial legislation and requirements. Please provide the actual legislation that states that every shovel of dirt must be sifted and monitored for anything. Also, we, the residents wanting to rebuild, want to know why this isn't being done in other communities or areas after fires. Example, Monty Creek. Their fire was about a month after ours, and a home that burned directly from Lytton fire was rebuilt in the TNRD with no archaeological work or building permit. We look forward to hearing these answers and seeing the legislation as it pertains to the village of Lytton and the TNRD at this community meeting. So I think I'll just put that over to Paula.
I think Paula had to step away, Yvonne. This is Don.
Okay.
I can answer that. It's all part of the Heritage Conservation Act. And I don't know what happened at Monty Creek or whatnot. I will say that the village proper is actually, there's a big long history under there from generations being part of the NNTC and part of the unceded territory within that area that required archaeological work to be done. I will say, I don't think there has been some miscommunications of how people's sites are being handled, or I don't think things were mishandled. I will say part of the archaeology branch's goal is to fast track things and help, and that sounds crazy because it's been so long, but part of that is to switch to the management direction to get us as recovery managers involved. If you guys, I can't talk specifically on sites and whatnot, but if anybody has questions, please reach out to us directly, either at recoverymanager@lytton.ca, or for the folks that have my number, please feel free to call. And we'll try and take care of you right as soon as we can.
Thanks so much, Don. And yes, and communications at Lytton is our main inbox, and we can forward on to the recovery managers too. Is there anyone else on the call that wanted to speak to that at all?
I will speak briefly to it if you'd like.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. I just will echo John's comments. I think he's spot on there. The piece of legislation specifically that is relevant here is the Heritage Conservation Act. And the key part, I think, in relevance to the question is the notion that archaeological sites are protected whether they're known or not. And so that goes back to Don's comments about the very deep history and the known and unknown sites on the village site. So I appreciate his comments and just the recognition there that the village has been working with their contractor to go through some of that archaeological work that then goes to the province once that reporting is done. And the province interprets that based on the Heritage Conservation Act and then comes back to the community. So that was the good news update that we heard earlier is the work that's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a question on the topsoil. I'm very saddened by the loss of all the topsoil on my property. That soil was amended and built up over many decades. It is one thing to have lost all the trees, shrubs, hedges, and plants, but with the topsoil gone, it is a barren landfill indeed. I would like to know what will replace this fertile organic soil that was in the garden growing area of my yard. Will it be tested to make sure it is not contaminated with pesticides and pollutants? Where will it be sourced from? Mike, is that you or is that a Ron Dickinson question or?
Oh, it's myself or Don. Do you want to address this one, Don, or do you want me to address this one?
I can go. All the fill that's coming into the village is coming from the Lytton First Nation. It all be tested first. It all be clean. It'll be at the residential level, so it's safe for growing, safe for kids. As some people like to point out, safe for worms.
Thank you so much. I've got a question on the homeowner program. It's a question for PacificCan. Why does this program discriminate against renters? If landlords cannot access this funding, but they choose to pay the considerable amount to meet net zero, rents will go up. If they choose not to meet net zero standards, then renters will live in substandard housing from the beginning. Either way, renters lose out. Jane, did you want to comment?
Sure, I recognize and I understood, and we heard the message at the Builder Symposium to the importance of housing for renters. That is correct in terms of the limitations of the program. It is available to homeowners rebuilding a primary residence. So we are happy to be part of the conversation. We know there's other partners looking at housing and housing options in Lytton. So we're happy to continue the dialogue following up to today and to continue the work we're doing.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the recovery team that would like to speak to that as well?
No, I think this is PacificCan's and to answer. I mean, we hope that there will be further explorations on how tenants can benefit, and we'll be working and supporting the village who on sort of finding out different options for that.
Thanks so much. We have a question. When will PacificCan be coming back to Lytton to meet with locals?
Well, we look forward to finding a time. I think we'll for sure look forward to coming in July, and we'll connect with Mike, with the mayor, with the just to make sure that our timing makes the best sense. But we absolutely look forward to coming back soon.
Thank you. And if anyone's on the call, feel free to put up your hand and we can go to you directly. If not, I do have a few more questions on the written list and from the chat. Is the Village of Lytton Recovery investigating a solar farm or grid to support the whole community? This holistic approach would benefit everyone, even the residents currently with homes. The downtown core does not receive full sun power.
Do you want me to answer that, Don? This is Don.
Yeah, Don, that would be great.
And I'm guessing, I think I know who put that question up. Yes, it's something that we are looking into. It's just not in the immediate future.
Great, thank you, Don. And this is a more specific one, I think, when they were talking about the net zero homes and stuff. Will the solar panels be used as the main source of energy, or will it be supplementary? I think that question was directed to a home.
Sure, I can answer that one. So the solar panels will be a primary source of energy. We expect that most of the energy the home uses will come from the solar panels. However, you still will be connected to the grid, so to whoever your hydro provider is, and that will ensure that, you know, in the event that the sun isn't shining or you need more power than the sun can produce for you, you can still take electricity from the hydro grid. So you'll have two different sources of power functioning at the same time.
Right. Thank you so much, Lucas. And still on net zero homes, is the price to build a net zero home much higher than a step 3 home? I would think some of the materials are priced higher. Is this true?
Yes, it is true. And that's part of our grant that we're offering for net zero construction reflects that incremental price increase. And we did quite a bit of work with the net zero builders. Jane mentioned that there's about 12 of them now in the central interior region. We worked with them to better understand what the cost would be to go from step 3 to net zero. And we feel that the numbers that we're providing for the grant reflect the information that we gathered from the builders, and that it's going to help you as homeowners get to a net zero home without adding any financial burden.
Great. And I'm just going to keep you on the hot spot here while I've got you. There's one more question here. Will the homeowners be required to pay upfront for the costs required to meet Fire Smart and net zero standards, i.e. the $86,000 for an 1,100 square foot home?
Maybe I'll turn that one over to Jane, if you're all right answering that one, Jane.
Yes, thanks, Lucas. Yes, the payment of the grant is at the end of the build. So in terms of the payment plan, that will be for the homeowner to determine, working with insurance, working with the builder to look at that. But the grant does come. It's an outcome-based grant that's provided at the end of the build. That's correct.
Thank you so much, Jane. One of our residents comment that Minister Osborne, Minister of Energy, made an announcement today, and we should all be taking a deep look at that. I'm certain that a grid-connected regional power is doable here, hybrid of solar, wind, hydro, biomass, and geothermal. So there's not a question, it's more of a comment, but if anyone wanted to respond.
This is Don. I'll just say, give us a couple weeks.
Great, thanks, Don. Okay, I think, we've got a couple more questions in the chat here. How does the Pacific Hand program support heat pumps, or does it?
Yep, so that's a good question. The Pacific Hand program, it supports a number of ingredients that go into a net zero home. Heat pumps are one of those ingredients, along with windows and insulation in your walls. And so we don't fund specific ingredients on their own. We fund them as part of the bigger recipe, if you will, to get to net zero. So heat pumps are included. They are quite typical in net zero homes. They lead to a lot of energy efficiencies, and they will likely be part of the recipe for your net zero home if you choose to go that route.
Thank you. And then we have a question again around the rental part. What is the rationale for rental or second homes not being covered by the Pacific Hand funding?
The focus of the grant is helping primary residents build back. So looking at a landlord that's more of a business. So I think we really did focus on the homeowner. It's a homeowner grant. So that's why it is structured the way it is.
Thank you. And that's a really good lead in to the next question, which does talk about business. So the question says, when will there be more information for the federally funded business program? And will landlords be able to qualify for net zero through that program?
So we are very much turning our attention to this program. That will be the second program to launch, and we're hoping this summer later this summer that we will come back with more information on that program. And in terms of whether or not landlords would qualify, I think there's more work to be done on that program, and then we could answer definitively on how it fits with the business program. But what I can say is we look at the business program and what it supports, it'll absolutely be connected to the priorities of the community, and we'll be making great efforts. That's like number one priority for us in the program, is making sure that it's reflective of that.
Thank you so much. That's good news to hear. I think that is all the questions. I'll just wait a couple minutes to see if there's any more that pop up. Or if there's any updates from the recovery team or mayor and council that we need to address after our Q&As. I'm not seeing any more come in. Oh, let me see. I do have a couple more. As part of rebuild, what requirements for slope assessment will be required? Example, properties below the CPR and properties above the CNR. I think that's a Ron question. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
There
Yeah, I'm coming. I agree with you. It is my question. There were a series. Well, there was one particular development permit area that would have addressed that in the past, but it hasn't been able to be rejuvenated yet as a result of the loss of the maps for the fire. So what's happened with the new building bylaw is that there's a requirement for every home that's being built to have a review done by a geotechnical review professional who will address all those issues, as well as other issues related to soil stability and compaction and that sort of thing. So each individual home will have that.
Thanks for clarifying. That's great. Thanks, Ron. Jane, I just had a clarification question for you on the Pacific Can, and I think the question about heat pumps was, is there any money just for a heat pump, or does it have to be attached to the whole net zero home part?
Yeah, there is. It's not a rebate program, and Lucas may want to speak to that as well. But that, when in the earlier slides where we spoke to the modeling work that was done, and that was to include things like heat pumps in the overall grant total. But maybe Lucas, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit more.
So just to be clear, there are not grants available for just a heat pump. The grant is available to achieve net zero, and a heat pump is a means of achieving net zero. You may also be able to achieve net zero with electric baseboards or a furnace, for instance. There's a number of ways to get there. And so the program, doesn't fund specific technologies, but rather the outcome of your house meeting the net zero target.
Thank you so much. And we have a question. Is there a way that the standing homes, the ones that are already standing, can enter into a grant to go more net zero and receive upgrades like heat pumps?
Not through the Pacific Can program at the moment. However, there may be opportunities through the province of BC or BC Housing or other jurisdictions that are offering grants to encourage energy efficient retrofits. And so, we can look into that for you and provide you with some resources, because across Canada, we are encouraging all existing homes to be more energy efficient and to strive toward net zero. So there may be funding out there available, and we can certainly look into that and share information.
That's great. Yeah, please forward that on, and we can include it in our Q&As with some existing programs that exist. And Jordan has his hand up. I'm just going to ask you to unmute for Jordan.
Sorry, 1 second. I just wanted to add in, I'm a certified energy advisor located out of Kamloops, and there is a program called the Canada Greener Homes Grant, and it is a top-up grant involving like energy efficient retrofits for things like heat pumps and solar or net zero, or just energy efficient retrofits overall.
That's great information. Thank you so much.
And I can also provide a link for that information as well.
Cool. If you want to pop it into the chat and then maybe also email it to communication@lytton.ca, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to do the call out one more time if there's any more questions.
I think we may have skipped over one from Ken. He had a question around.
Yep.
Thank
Thank you, Lucas. In a net zero home based around a heat pump, what allowance is made for a long power outage?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. In a net zero home, there's solar panels. So if sun is shining and the power is out, then you're able to generate power when the sun is out. So you're in the clear there. Otherwise, if the grid goes down, then you have no access to electricity coming from that source. So alternatives that exist are backup generators or battery packs, for instance. Those are not covered in the Pacific program. But I can't remember if folks were there from the symposium, but there's a number of battery and backup power providers available in the area. And that's certainly a good resource for when the power does go out for extended periods of time and we're not able to capture enough solar energy to keep us going.
Thank you. Is there any other questions that I've missed? Or any new questions? Oh, Jordan?
Sorry, me again. I just want to add something to what Lucas said, that as far as resiliency goes, a higher performance house also performs better when something goes wrong in a situation where there's a power outage. If the house is well insulated and has better performing windows and tighter air exchange because it was designed to be net zero, you'll have less heat loss through the building envelope when there is a power outage. So it'll keep it, essentially warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer for longer. So depending on the length of that power outage, you may end up on top.
Excellent. And Councillor Lightfoot has asked, for power outages, could wood heat backup be acceptable?
Yep, for sure. There are lots of off-grid homes and things that use electric baseboards and solar as a primary heat source and have wood stoves as a backup heat source. Net zero is one of those things that's pretty fuel agnostic. So as long as you can meet the requirements, you essentially can use any fuel source you like.
Thank you. So just checking with the recovery team, Mayor O'Connor, if there's any other comments, or if you'd like to wrap us up, Mayor O'Connor, with some closing remarks, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to turn it over to Mike Blaschuk here for a second.
Yeah, I just want to let people know something will be coming up on June 30th, and mark your calendar. We had the prayer walk. That was one of the first events I attended when I got here. And I was amazingly impressed by that, but I was also struck by something Ernie said. And he said, I may not get the quote exact, that this village has burned down 4 times, and 3 times we've rebuilt it. We obviously missed something in starting it right. And he suggested we should have a blessing on the rebuild, and we're getting ready to start the rebuild. So we're reaching out to the faith community, and we will have a not designed to be a massive event, but on June 30th to bless the rebuild of this and make certain we are starting on the right foot. So those that want to attend, we will have some food there. We will have some smiles, maybe a few tears, but we will be there on June 30th and welcome anybody who wants to come down. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So we are coming to the end of the meeting here. I typically like to just kind of summarize the meeting. So I'll do that. We started with a presentation from Paula and the Heritage Branch. And she talked about how when we have questions about archaeology to contact the village. I think what she meant was probably to contact Mike or Dawn through recoverymanager.ca. You can email them. recoverymanager@lytton.ca. Please don't contact the mayor, because I'm not going to have any answers about archaeology for you. Patrick then summarized the rebuilding symposium and more. So thank you, Patrick, for that. Ron Dickinson, you encouraged people to call you and to talk about the building permit process, and you would make it easy for people. You would talk with them. Can you provide a number in the chat here for people? I think that would be helpful. Pacifican, of course, reviewed the homeowner resiliency program, and that you would be accepting applications up till June 14th of 2024. So over the next year, as people are thinking about their plans for rebuilding, they have lots of time to make those applications, or make that application. And then we had the recovery management. Thank you, Mike, for giving us the update and laying it out very clear with the phases, with that information. I'm going to be going back and looking at the YouTube video and listen again, and I encourage people to do that. Any part of, in fact, this entire meeting, go onto the YouTube channel, the Village of Lytton, and take a look at it. Fast forward to the parts you want to see, whatever. There's so much information there and so much going on. So I guess that does bring us to the end of the meeting, and thank you so much. I'm not sure how many people were on tonight, but I think we had a good crowd. Our next meeting will be in July. I think July 20th, if I'm correct. So
That's our tentative date. Yes.
Tentative date. So watch for that. And thank you, everyone. And thank you for attending.
Thanks, everyone. That concludes our meeting for tonight. Just check back for the website or check your email for the newsletter, and we'll have the meeting recorded and posted, and we'll follow up with some Q&As in written form in a few days. Thank you.